What is going on, guys? It is the Coaster Battleman here, bringing you a coaster countdown, the top 9 roller coasters at Heide Park in Germany. And I haven't done a coaster countdown in a while now, but it's nice to see that I'm doing a coaster countdown on a park in Europe, because the United States, eventually it gets kind of boring doing countdowns for the United States because of, I don't know, it's kind of fun to switch things up and do parks overseas and their coaster lineup and what's my opinion on what their best coasters are. And Heide Park is no exception to this. So number 9 is Indy Blitz, and this is the kiddie coaster or kid roller coaster of this park. And to me, what's kind of creepy about it is the Indian head that's on the front of the train. It doesn't look that appealing to the younger kids. I think it would probably scare them or imitate them. So overall, this coaster is not the most appealing kids roller coaster out there, but at least it looks like a decent ride for some kids. So overall, not a bad ride, but it's definitely the worst coaster here because it is a kiddie coaster. Number 8 is Groton Blitz, and this coaster is a powered roller coaster. It looks pretty good. This coaster was built actually way back in 1985, so it's been operating for quite some time. And the theming looks alright on this. There's some some small buildings and stuff all over and surrounding the coaster. It looks like a pretty well themed roller coaster in my opinion. Not a bad ride at all. It looks more appealing for the kids as the trains look like actual trains. So yeah, overall Groton Blitz doesn't look like a bad ride at all, but it's not as good as the coasters higher on this list. Number 7 is the Bokoma SLC Limit. We know what Bokoma SLCs are like. They're cloned all over the place, and everyone says they're super rough and not that enjoyable, especially Coaster Studios, as he legit hates Bokoma SLCs and says they're the worst coasters in the world. But overall, I have ridden a Bokoma SLC, which is Thunderhawk at Michigan's Adventure, and I didn't mind it, so I don't know how I would react to this ride, because some Bokoma SLCs are smoother than others. Number 6 is another Bokoma. Yeah, it's Bokoma time. Big Loop. So Big Loop is a classic looping roller coaster, and Bokoma used to build old looping coasters like these, similar to the Aero Loopers, except they're built by Bokoma. Bokoma uses the same track as Aero, at least back in the 1980s and 1990s. But moving on to the actual ride experience, this coaster has a pretty small drop, a few vertical loops, and 2 corkscrews. Not really the best coaster. I mean, the elements are alright for its time, but overall, this coaster is kind of rough, I bet. And if any of you guys know how bad this coaster is or how good it is, or of any coasters in this park, please post your thoughts in the comments below. So number 5 is Weiser Bobon. So this bobsled coaster looks pretty fun. It has some helixes and some pretty tight turns. Overall, very fun ride for the families, and it's pretty unique because it's one of the few bobsleds out there. So overall, not a bad ride experience at all. Pretty unique, and it's similar to Avalanche at King's Dominion, as it has multiple cars that are combined into one giant train, and the train just moves around the bobsled track. Overall, I wish more bobsleds were built over time, but unfortunately they haven't been really built at all. So number 4, we're getting into the good roller coasters. Desert Race. This is a pretty fun coaster. It isn't the greatest Intamin launch coaster, but it looks pretty fun. There's some small airtime hills throughout the ride. They'll like some nice ejector airtime hills. The first launch looks okay. Overall, this coaster isn't bad. It is kind of small and kind of short, but it does kind of pack a punch. I mean, Intamin coasters are pretty intense, and this looks like one of the weaker Intamin coasters out there, or in Europe, but it doesn't look too bad. Number 3 is Craic, and this is another kind of weak coaster for its type. It's a smaller B&M dive coaster, but it has some good theming. It's themed to a kraken, I believe, and you dive into this pirate ship that's being invaded by a kraken, and you go into this Immelman loop, which is the only inversion on this coaster. The Immelman looks pretty good, and there are a few small airtime hills and turns before you hit the brakes. So this is a pretty short coaster, pretty basic dive coaster. It's not like your Valraven or Griffin where they have kind of average ride times and a giant drop. This is a smaller version of that. But it's still a very fun coaster for the coaster enthusiasts and the thrill junkies. Number 2 is Flug der Dämonen, and I believe the translation to this is Flight of the Demon is what I've heard. But overall, this coaster looks pretty fun. It has some nice inversions, a pretty good wing over drop, and definitely one of the best coasters at this park, but doesn't make number 1. And there's only one coaster that makes number 1. Because overall, this is definitely the best B&M/steel coaster at this park. But we're moving on to number 1. We got Colossus. This coaster is the highlight attraction of this park. Even though there are some pretty good coasters here, this definitely is the one that tops them all. This is a massive wooden coaster, and I mean a massive wooden coaster. There's some insane airtime moments, helixes, bank turns, I believe, and this first drop looks insane because this coaster is in between 190 feet and 200 feet, I believe. So it's almost a hyper wooden coaster. Just another 10 feet and it would have been a hyper coaster. So Colossus, very good wooden coaster. One of the best wooden roller coasters in Europe and in the world in general. Very fun wooden coaster. Definitely the best coaster at Heide Park by far. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more videos and coaster countdowns.